Hi guys, this is Charlie at Vintage Speed. Today we're going to show you the disassembly of the Stromberg 97. This also holds true for the 40, the 48, and the 81 series carburetors. They're all basically the same Venturi size differences, and there are some small differences in the carburetors. Okay, disassembly is probably the hardest part on the 97 due to the fact that they're so old, and a lot of times things are all rusted and corroded up. But we're going to show you a lot of the tricks we've learned over the years for taking them apart. So we're going to remove the pump rod, and then we're going to remove the choke bracket and the fast idle cam. This is attached to the base. Now there's a little spring right there that goes on. Make sure you don't lose that. And we make these springs new. This is a double wound spring that returns the choke. Inside here you'll find there's a detent. Now the Stromberg 97 and the 81 have this little detent spring. If you have trouble getting this out, if it wants to stick, put a little PB blaster around it and soak it. Sometimes you have to apply a little bit of heat to the zinc right here with a MAP gas torch or a propane, and that'll swell this up enough that it'll come out. Sometimes they're stuck in there. Remove that. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to take off our top. There's 5 top screws. The main thing I can tell you on these is do no harm in disassembly, because a lot of guys get parts that are stuck and they try to drill them out, and then they slip off the part and damage the carburetor. We've got a bunch of them here that are damaged. And before you damage it, if you can't get the part out, we can generally disassemble any part of this carburetor, because we have special fixtures if you do break a part off where we can fix it. Okay, once that's done, you can remove the top gasket, and we're going to set the top aside here for the time being. Okay, now I'm going to do a separate video on the base assembly showing you how to take it apart, but this will basically be the disassembly of the float bowl and the top, and then we're going to do a cleaning and rebuild on it. You got 3 screws that hold the bowl to the base assembly. Okay, here's your base assembly. Your base assembly has to come apart by removing your throttle plate screws, remove your butterflies, and at that point this will slip out. Now there's a steel bushing that holds your fast idle cam on. If you don't have to take that off, you can leave that on during the rebuild and clean it with part of the base. If you do take it apart, then I'll show you later how to the best way to remove it. Okay, let's go to our float assembly first. I've already loosened this, I believe. No. Okay, your needle and seat comes out. Okay, should you have stripped threads here, we have a procedure for it. If it's a standard size and it was stripped, we can helicoil it. We have the special helicoils to put in it. If it's already oversized, don't discard it. We can put a steel insert in it for you and bring it back to standard thread. Okay, now your float pin comes out here. Sometimes these are, the slot in them is stripped out. If it is stripped out, what you can do is you can take a tiny little Dremel tool and cut a new slot in it so you can get a screwdriver on it. If it's stiff, put a little heat on it right around here, right around the edge there, and generally as soon as you warm it up a little bit, it'll come out. Okay, now you can remove your float. Okay, these are your idle tubes, pickup tubes. They generally come out fairly easy. Sometimes if you find that you've got one that's really hard to get out, soak it in a little PB blaster, and then if it's still stiff, don't wring it off. Apply some heat right around here, and generally it'll come right out. Okay, the same thing with your power valve. Your power valve is also the check valve for your pump. It's in the very bottom of the accelerator pump well. And what you want to use for that is they make a special tool here that we have that has a notch cut in the middle. And the reason for that is you don't want to damage the stem on that power valve. If you don't happen to have one, you can use a wide screwdriver and just take a cutoff tool and put you a little notch in the middle so that the stem will sit right over that notch, and reach down in there and take your power valve out. It's also good to soak that a little bit too, and generally they'll come out. If something happens, you've got one where the power valve is broke off, we also have a fixture that goes down in here, and we can mill it out. It cuts it out to the size, just below the size of the thread, and then we can run a tap in there and clean out the threads, and we can repair the bowl. If your power valve is stripped off here where somebody's twisted it off, don't try to drill it out without a fixture. If you try to drill it out without a fixture, your drill will run off to the side and you'll damage the carburetor. Okay, next you're gonna remove your two jet well plugs that are here, and generally they don't give you much of a problem coming out. They're the ones on the outer part, and that exposes your jet and your emulsion tubes. The center one is the other check valve for the accelerator pump, and it's the little check valve is, you can see it down in there. That comes right out, and generally they don't give you much problem either. Here's where you get into the thing that always gives you trouble. It's your jets and your tubes. These carbs were originally run on leaded gasoline. So what happens is your jet, the threads inside the bowl of the carburetor here, will get lead deposits on them. And it'll make, when you start to back the jet out, it'll come out a certain amount and then it'll stop. The best way we found to do that is lubricate them good. Take your, by the way, we make these jet wrenches in 2 or 3 different styles. This style is made so we can put it in a screw gun, or you can use a wrench on it, and we use it in a battery operated drill. Okay, now here's the procedure we use to put them in. Insert the wrench down over the jet. Sometimes you'll find that if you put it in, you have to tap it to get it down on the jet. If the jet doesn't want to come free, you can take a mallet and tap the end of the jet wrench. Smack it a couple of times, and usually that'll break it free. If you start to turn it out and it gets tight, don't continue to take it out, or you'll wring the head of the jet off. What you want to do is you want to run it in, run it out, run it in, run it out, and every time you come out, it'll clean a couple more threads, and then finally you'll be able to pull the jet right out to the carburetor, just like that. Remember, run it in and out. Okay. Now this is the part that usually overwhelms most guys, is the emulsion tubes. The emulsion tubes are these little brass tubes that come up here, and this is the brains of the carburetor. Everything on your main circuit is controlled by these tubes, because this is what meters your fuel. Now, this is what the emulsion tube looks like, and some of the common problems with the emulsion tube is the emulsion tube goes into the carburetor and it seats against this little flange right here. So what'll happen, guys, will have the emulsion tube in, they'll tighten the jets down too tight, and that recessed part right there will squeeze the holes. The early emulsion tubes had 4 holes in them. Later, they went to 2 holes to strengthen this part so it didn't collapse the tube as bad. The new ones that we make and sell, the holes are larger, but we only have 2 holes in the tube, and that makes the tube stronger in this point. Remember, when you're tightening jets down, you just want to run them down until they're snug. Now, we make this nifty little kit to remove emulsion tubes, and it comes with a T-handle and a tap. And what you do is you insert the tap. You don't have to drill anything, just insert the tap in the tube, and you want to run the tap in there about 4 or 5 turns. That's all you need. Take your tap out and take this special screw and washer and insert that screw in there and tighten it down until it's snug. And this doesn't need to be in but about 4 or 5 turns. Okay, now you've got the washer on there and you got the nut. You spin the nut down tight against the washer, and what we usually do, you can do this with a wrench if you like, or in the case for speed, you can do it with a deep well socket. Just to slide the socket down over the nut and take it. And you extract your tube out. Okay, never try to put something against the tube and push it out from this end. If you do, what you'll do, you'll expand the end of the tube and you'll never get the tube out. So it ruins it, and then they're very hard to get out once you do that. So you got to be careful that you don't do that. All right, where'd my little screwdriver go? Also, on these emulsion tubes, where we're threading the tube right there, it's just a passage. So putting the threads in it has no effect on the tube and the fuel flow. Okay. So we're going to pull this other one out. Like I said, it only needs to be in there 4 or 5 threads. And that nifty little arrangement pulls them right out. We get a lot of carburetors in here that come from rebuilders that don't pull the tubes out because they don't know how to take them out. This is the brain of the carburetor. These holes will tend to get, especially if the carburetor is an old core and it's set, a lot of them will come out and they'll have a lot of white powder on them. That's zinc oxide, the same thing you put on your nose for sunburn. It's caused by the reaction between the brass and the zinc, and these holes will get clogged up. These holes that are in the small part right here are your passage for your idle fuel. So if those holes, if the tube has been collapsed like this one has, where they pinch the holes shut, the carburetor won't idle. So emulsion tubes are very critical, and we have the emulsion tubes brand new if you need them. Okay, let's go to the your squirter tubes. As a general rule, never remove these from the carburetor. If something happens, you're missing one, or if it gets plugged up, the best thing to do is to blow air through it, or you can take a little drop of muriatic acid and an eyedropper and drop it right on the tip of the tube, and if there's any grit in there, it'll dissolve it and you can blow it out. But generally you can clean them. You can also take a fine torch tip cleaner, because the tube down at the end is pinched smaller. Usually if there's a blockage, it's right at the end of the tube and you can clean it out. Make sure that those are clean, and you should be able to blow down in and blow air through the tubes. Blow it down in your your pump well. Okay, that completes taking the bowl apart. Now we're going to go to the top. All right, the top uses Some of the pumps use a cotter pin here. In the case of this one, it uses a little hairpin clip, so you can remove the fulcrum arm off of the pump, and then the pump will come out. This little spring right here, return spring, we also have these in a standard duty and music wire, and we also have them in a heavy duty spring, which gives you more return, and we have them in heavier stainless steel. So we have two different ones of these, and they're new. All right, now on your choke, if you'll look carefully, all of these screws that are for throttle plates and chokes are special in that they have a little dimple in the end of them. You see that? Here's your head part and your dimple. Well, if you get one from the factory, what they did is they put a tool in there and they spread that out, so they braided it over. So if you go to take your screw out, you'll break it off. So what you want to do is you want to take yourself a small drill bit, and you want to just drill just the brad off. Just touch it to it so it cuts that brad part off the screw, and then you can take and pull your choke plate screws out. Then your choke plate will remove. The choke shaft on a stock 97, if it's got them in it, or 48, this is a little teeny pin that goes inside the shaft. There's never a way to take those out without breaking them. So generally, most people don't remove the actual shaft when they're servicing the carburetor. It is impossible to get that out. It's pressed in there, and the pin is really tiny, like a 32nd of an inch, and it's in a hole drilled in the end of the shaft. The aftermarket ones used a screw in there to hold that on. If you want to put it in. Now back to this end of the top. The Model 40s and 48 carburetors didn't have this detent. They used what's called a wave washer on here. It was a washer that was oblong, had a wave in it. So in order to hold tension on this, it was done with a wave washer. So this part of the top is missing. If you've got a top like this with the detent area, it either came off of a Stromberg 97 or it came off of a Stromberg 81. If you've got a top that doesn't have this piece on here, then it came off of a Model 40 or 48. Okay, and now I guess we'll go ahead and finish the base assembly here while we're at it. Okay, you can see here, if you look in there, that these screws have been braided over. This is an original base, so they have been braided over. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that braided area off of there. You don't want to take much off this. You don't want to get into the throttle stuff. Just hit them just a few times with the drill. Doesn't take much to get that braided area off, or weaken it enough that the throttle plate screws will come out. Once the braided area is taken off, the throttle plate screws will come out. And you can see on the end how it cut that braided area right off. Once the braided area is off, your throttle plate should slide right out. Okay, let's see if we can get these two out. Okay, we got the screws out. We got our throttle plate out. Okay, once your throttle plate's out, your throttle shaft should come right on out. Okay, there's your throttle shaft. Now let me explain to you the different throttle shafts. This type of throttle shaft end, linkage in, pressed on and didn't have a double detent. This is used on the Model 81 and the Stromberg 97. If you've got the earlier carburetor, the Model 48, it used an arm that looked like this, and it had a double D there. We have the shafts for both of these arms. The other thing I might mention, the pump rod on a 97 is about a ½ inch longer than it is on a 40 and 48. The 40 and 48 that use this style arm use the short pump rod. This style arm use the longer rod. So there you can basically see the difference in the way they are. And I have both of those arms. Those pump rods in stock. So if you need them. All right, now we're down. We're going to remove our mixture screws. Mixture screws. An old one is as good as a new one, as long as there's not a ridge on it right there. What guys will do, they'll tend to screw these in and tighten them down too tight, and what they'll do, they'll actually either bend the tip or they'll put a ridge on it. Now that one's got a ridge in it. If you have the ridge, you need to replace your mixture screws. And the trick to saving your mixture screws and not ruining them is when you go to snug them in, you want to tighten them just till they barely touch, and then back them out your turn and a half. Don't wrench down on them, or you'll put the groove in them and ruin the tube. Okay, now for this part of the video, we're going to have to apply some heat because this bushing has to come out to remove that carb arm. Hand me that propane torch over here, guys. John and I need the vice grip pliers. Vice grip pliers. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to apply heat, and you don't have to be afraid of getting this too hot, but you want to heat up the cast iron around where that bushing's at. What that'll do is it'll swell up the cast iron enough that you can clamp down on the bushing and remove the bushing. Once the bushing starts to wiggle, apply outward pressure on it and just pull the bushing right out. There's your bushing removed. Okay, you don't want to damage that bushing, although we have these brand new also. Okay guys, there's your disassembly. On our next video, we'll be cleaning and we'll start the assembly on this carburetor. If you have any questions or you need any parts, you can call me, Charlie, at Vintage Speed, 772-778-0809, or go on our online catalog and order any parts. We have the world's most extensive line of parts for the Stromberg 97 81 48s, Holly 94s, and Rochester 2 barrels. www.vintagespeed.com, and just go on the online catalog and order. Thank you.